Hi there, and welcome back to this third Explaining History videocast, looking at how to construct essays and particularly how to write an essay about the extent that the Nazis used tyranny and terror to control Germany through the 1930s and 1940s. Okay, so let's get back into it. Let's look at our essay. Let's see how we're coming along. So the last time, if you recall, we were looking at how to continue a line of argument through the paragraphs. And the first thing we looked at is how the Nazis, the extent of Nazi terror when they were enforcing their rule after the Reichstag fire in the 27th of February 1933. See, I was right. If you haven't seen any of these videos so far, go back, look at the first one, which is all about an introduction and a line of argument, and then the second one, and it'll bring you up to speed. And do that now. Okay, great, cool, I'll see you back. So let's carry on. Now we're going to look at the Night of the Long Knives. Now, the reason why we're skipping on to this is it's the next most significant example where we can look at how the Nazis are using terror and the extent to which. Now, we're going to look again at this key point, the extent to which the Nazis overwhelmingly ruled through terror. And this is the thing that you need to bring out in your next paragraph. Did the Nazis, in this instance, during the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, rule overwhelmingly through terror? Or really, did they, we're not disputing that they used terror, certainly they did. The arrest and execution of 300 SA men was a terrifying experience for those involved. But that's not the point. The point is this question here. Overwhelmingly, was the entire country overwhelmed by terror in this instance? Or is it more, or did something else happen? Now I'm going to make the case here that there was, again, a selective use of terror, and we've made that point in this paragraph already, that there is a selective use of terror, but actually most Germans don't respond they don't respond to the events by being utterly terrified. In fact, many Germans think that something fairly positive has happened. So, let's have a go. So, I'm going to write something now, okay? So we're going to start off by contextualizing it. By the summer of 1934, it was becoming increasingly clear that that divisions are opening up. Try and write it properly. In the Nazi movement. There were a number of reasons why Hitler decides to move against the SA. Firstly, the SA are becoming increasingly embarrassing to him. He's trying his hardest to reassure Germany's middle classes that Nazism is not like is not like socialism. It's not going to develop into this left-style social revolution. And the actions of the brown shirts, certainly the brown shirts are nothing really to do with socialism particularly, but they are more working class in their outlook, and they really are hoping that all the fighting they've done for Hitler, all the heads they've busted in Communist Party meetings and in beer halls, this is all going to be rewarded somehow. And they were hoping really that some kind of gifts of titles and pensions and jobs would be handed over to the brown shirts, so they could have some status and a little bit of wealth during the harshness of the Depression. However, as I said, they are becoming increasingly embarrassing to Hitler. And Ernst Röhm, who is the leader of the brown shirts, is making increasingly unfortunate statements about what he thinks should happen next. A lot of the things that Hitler's hearing, he's hearing through the filter of Goering and Himmler, who enjoy really winding Hitler up for their own purposes and feeding him the selected and distorted things that Rome is saying and implying that really Rome is plotting to conspire against Hitler. When Rome writes to the head of the army insisting that the brown shirts, the army be, which is 100,000 strong, be incorporated into the brown shirts, which is as a national militia, and the brown shirts become the defence force for Germany, the brown shirts being well over 2 million strong at this point. This is the point at which the army's patience with Hitler breaks. Hitler is very, very wary of the army because he knows really it's the one force in Germany that can replace him. And he makes a tacit deal with the army that the elimination of Rome and the leadership of the brown shirts will result in an oath of loyalty from the officer corps and the rank and file to Hitler. And these are things. This is something that really finally cements Hitler's power as dictator. So by the summer of 1934, it's becoming increasingly clear that divisions were opening up within the Nazi movement. The Nazi Party itself, the SA being obviously the brown shirts, the Nazi Party itself was criticised by the SA led by Ernst Röhm, who was anxious So there's our context. The Nazi Party itself was criticised by the SA, led by Ernst Röhm, who was anxious for a further social revolution to take place, and he hinted in his speeches that if the leadership of the leadership of the Nazi Party was unwilling to bring it about, then they might be removed by the SA. Okay, so I've made that clear, and I've made it clear who's saying what and where they're saying these things. He's doing it in speeches. And I'm going to say one more bit of contextualisation here. And we don't want to go do too much contextualisation because it's going to take us off otherwise into elements of narrative. But this bit's very important. And I said it earlier on. So now we've got to address the question. So we'll say that yes, terror was used. When the Right, okay. I'm having one of those senior moments where the specific date eludes me, so let me just pause this podcast for a moment. And we're back, and it was on the 30th of June. See, even the best history teachers have to look things up and check things from time to time. So when the leadership of the SA was arrested at the Hanselbauer Hotel in Bad Weissy on the 30th of June 1934, Hitler used Okay, so there's a long bit of typing there. So I'll just talk you through this because we're going to do a clever trick in a moment. Well, I think it's terribly clever anyway, but I suppose I would. So, when the leadership of the SA was arrested, so I'll highlight that. When the leadership of the SA was arrested at the Hanselbauer Hotel in Bad Weissy on the 30th of June 1934, Hitler used his own personal bodyguard, the SS, to imprison and execute them, which is clearly an act of terror, and it sent a message to the rest of the movement about the force the regime was prepared to use, even against those who supported it. So if you were to just stop there, I would essentially be agreeing with the statement: the Nazis ruled overwhelmingly through terror. Well, here's some terror. They're clearly terrorizing people. But, and here's where you get your marks from, really. But here's how you demonstrate that you're thinking critically about things. However, to suggest that this was an overwhelming use of terror, or to suggest that they ruled overwhelmingly through some terror by looking at this example, that's a better way to say. So this sentence I've put in here, to suggest that the party ruled overwhelmingly through terror by looking at this example could be misleading. Only a very small number. No one's quite sure, but they think it's around 300. Some other opponents were assassinated. There were some members of the old military conservative aristocracy who were murdered. Franz von Papen gets away with his life just by the skin of his teeth. So Hitler does type a few loose ends, but really, for the most part, very little else happens. And the reports of the reports of the event are suppressed. Get rid of that S. So here is the rub. I'm just going to get rid of that bit there because that's annoying me. So to suggest that the party ruled overwhelmingly through terror by looking at this example could be misleading. A very small number, approximately 300 SA members, were arrested and killed, and the rest of the country was largely unaffected. Reports of the purge were suppressed, but rumours were so persistent that Hitler was forced to speak publicly about it and justify his actions 10 days later. The response to Hitler's broadcast was largely positive, as many Germans believed he'd saved them from a revolution and mass violence. Now, if you're going to be, shall we say that the students are going to not do very well, they're not going to really excel at this question, they're going to miss out all that. They're going to blunder through and just say, well, look, there were some terrifying things happening, therefore there was lots of terror. What else do you want to know? And that's not a critical approach. That's not critical thinking. That's not evaluating. Going, what was it? Was it really? Were there people in Munich or Hamburg who were largely unaffected by this? Who weren't terrified all day, every day? And yes, there were. To be murdered in the Night of the Long Knives, one has to be a senior member of the Brown Shirts. You have to have been a part of the Nazi movement for a very, very long time. And, whilst this is not very nice for them, it does not mean that there was, at this point, the Nazis are ruling overwhelmingly through terror. They don't have to. They have widespread public consent. Even people that ideally don't really approve of the Nazis still think that they're a better alternative to the possibility of the spectre of communism. Anyway, what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to look at how Hitler uses other devices other than terror. He uses economic and social policies not to terrorise but to build consent, because that's the other half of the argument. So I hope you found this interesting. Now, if you need anything else or any other guidance, help, assistance, you can always find it at www.explaininghistory.com. You can check out our podcast. There's tons and tons of help there for students. And stay tuned, because on this YouTube channel, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be launching some crucial information about the first of our video courses for you to use to take you from where you're at to outstanding in GCSE or A level. Anyway, catch us on the next video cast, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.